Hello, this is Doug Dormer, and this is episode or lesson, module 1, lesson 3, an introductory overview of consumer health informatics. I will start each module, I expect, with something that's in the news, and I may even publish something separately that is something in the news, but generally I'll reserve them to the beginning of that week's module to introduce something in the news. I mentioned this in one of the earlier lessons. A working group meeting of the AMIA, American Medical Informatics Association, enabling environmental drivers of health data interoperability to improve whole person health will be held on January 30th. So environmental drivers of health, EDOH. We have SDOH, social determinants of health. Now we have environmental drivers of health. So it's something that's coming. I'm inviting my students to attend. And frankly, it's something that I'm not sure if you have to be an AMI and a member, and further a member of this work group. I'll certainly publish something anyway that will tell you my takeaways from this meeting. But it shows you how urgent this stuff is and how timely it is for us to consider these questions as it relates to consumer health informatics. Why consumer health informatics? Boy, I don't know. I'll bet that there isn't anybody, whether it's a student in my class or anybody watching this, certainly not me, who doesn't come away from the healthcare system feeling dissatisfied, that we are being processed, that we are being, it's like we bring our body in like it's a car and into a garage, and they say, okay, we see the problem. Okay, we're going to fix the problem. Here you go. Do this, go away. And we don't feel as engaged or empowered in our own health as we might. And we will spend time talking about why this is the case. I have my whole class, The Business of Health IT, tends to dive much more deeply into that question. But for this purpose, it's sufficient to say, why consumer health informatics? Because that's the key to empowering the individual, the patient, the consumer, to give us the same kind of practical authority in our own health that we see in every other dimension of our lives. Now, we could debate who controls the internet and are we all subject to certain moguls and certain Silicon Valley elites. Truth to that. But the point is, we should be more engaged. We should be more empowered. And that's what consumer health informatics is all about. Some of the topics we'll cover: models for delivery of CHI over different platforms, patient-driven social media-based models, synchronous telehealth, telemental health, asynchronous evidence-based applications that serve either as a complement to or an extension of a live encounter. That's my favorite area, and that's the area where there's some really interesting stuff. Passive consumer health, such as remote patient monitoring, technology solutions that attempt to address diversity, equity, and inclusion in this turbulent time, and technology solutions that extend beyond traditional physical health and mental health to include social determinants of health, climate, all of those exposome kinds of factors. So really interesting topics. Our learning objectives: evaluate that phrase, consumer health, and its relationship to electronic health records, understand the history of incentives and barriers, understand the range of technologies, understand the impact of recent legislation, how long a runway we have, how to know how players influence and set priorities for consumer health informatics, to understand the shift to value-based care, risk-sharing payment models for providers, and that impact on consumer health informatics, to evaluate market potential and cost and risk for specific CHI applications, to analyze the challenges in measuring the effect of, it should be consumer satisfaction, the effect of consumer information on consumer satisfaction, or even simply to improve health. Let's go back one. and understand how to build an executive summary, whether it's for management or investors to support or for a grant application, to really be able to take the knowledge that I hope we have through our discussion and consolidate it into a practical tool that we could use, or at least know how someone else might use. Now, this is a kind of a conceptual model I've been playing with. I kind of like. It's kind of based off something called, there's the company Gardner, which is a huge, wonderful consultancy, has what it's called its four quadrant model. And it's one of those things where they've got a particular use of something that's fairly common. So you along two axes, you measure certain characteristics and you kind of look at their interplay together. So in this case, along the y-axis, I'm looking at therapeutic kinds of functions and decisions versus administrative. And within that, I'm looking at behavioral on the x-axis between behavioral factors and non-behavioral factors. Now, I don't mean behavioral health versus physical health here. I mean behavioral health related activities, things you can do that affect your health versus things that are health related, but they're not related to what you do. And I'll illustrate what I mean. So in the administrative side, that's easy. Scheduling an appointment, checking in, managing prescriptions, bill payments, all that kind of stuff is just administrative junk. And certainly there's a place for some notion of consumer health informatics to the extent that the consumer interacts with this stuff. On the non-behavioral side, what I'm getting at here, and this is a better illustration, surgery, the actual medications, x-rays, physical therapy, things that happen to you where you aren't as much doing them, but they're part of your health record. That would be non-behavioral. They're not a part of your behavior. Then we have the behavioral stuff, including consumer information, patient information. Peer support fits within here. Status reporting, behavioral medicine, and behavioral medicine is the big catch-all. Diet, exercise, adhering to medication or other protocols, all that falls within behavioral medicine. And then I have to add a few more here along the way. Oops, I have to first note that when we talk about consumer health informatics, where we're talking primarily, I think, about using technology to influence behavioral health-related activities, somewhat with respect to non-behavioral, at least being able to hopefully see the results of your x-rays, for example, to see the results of your surgeries. So, but it's really more behavioral in its core focus. And there's certainly some overlap on the administrative side of things as well. But in addition, we have it as an opportunity for research, an opportunity to establish and track patient adherence, really part of that behavioral medicine piece, and also to support policy advocacy and patient consumer activation. Now, what are the major trends? Well, pretty easy stuff. It's nothing here we haven't familiar with, even if we don't organize it the way I might. Changing expectations for both patients and consumers and for providers. So consumers are beginning to expect, why don't I have access to this? Why do you make me come in to see you in this day and age only to give me or tell me something that I could have communicated through or that I could have tracked and managed through using a technology? Separate from these consumers and providers, we have to deal with payers as we shift from fee-for-service to value-based care models. So that really begins to bring the payers as influencing the trend. And now with the Republican administration wanting to move away from federal government mandates, federal government overregulation, federal government payments to state funding, state priorities, or market-driven, which means payers, commercial insurance, directly or indirectly, that shift is huge. Next, we have new regulatory models related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I add the word maybe because we don't know what the next administration will do. If they follow on particularly what Vice President-elect J.D. Vance says, diversity and equity and inclusion will absolutely be prohibited at the federal level. So interesting things will happen during the course of these lectures with respect to an area that has done some really interesting work over the last 4 years or so that has really shown, I believe, some significant benefits by bringing people into the fold, overcoming barriers and resistance that people of certain communities have when they encounter the healthcare system. So really interesting trends to watch. And of course, the exposome, climate. As I record this, everything in the news is about fires in Los Angeles. My gosh, huge devastation. And that is not going to change. I think broadly it's an extension of climate, although that's my personal view. And I should say right now, this series of lectures is not about politics. It's not about the merit of healthcare policies. It's about what are the policies and how do we react to them within the policies that are the real world in which we operate. And of course, we'll be talking a fair bit about the 2024 election. So I hope one of the key values I bring to you is a current discussion. There'll be a lot about the differences between Democratic and Republican policies and the impact of Republicans on healthcare and healthcare policy. What's not, I don't expect to see as much will be the impact on consumer health informatics or health IT generally. So I will certainly be focusing on how these policies affect consumer health informatics, and through that, what their effect will be on the empowering of the patient as a consumer. Emerging technologies, just a quick touch on it. Artificial intelligence, my gosh, ubiquitous, huge, and not as simple to look at in terms of how it gets applied as we might think. As I said earlier, if I look back at the earlier parts of my career, I was constantly thinking about what I needed in the technology that hadn't been developed yet, that was 6 months out front. Not anymore. Now I'm thinking, how do I keep up? How can I participate, even be aware of the technology that exists and how it can be applied? A very different challenge than what it was 10, 20 years ago. Blockchain technology, that which underpins Bitcoin, has some really interesting opportunities. The scope of where blockchain can apply in healthcare, I believe, is a little narrower. It's not really broad. It's specific things it is ideal for. But where it fits, my gosh, it's a wonderful technology. We will look at that somewhat as it relates to consumer health informatics. The Internet of Things, again, my Aura ring right here. Amazing technology in this fellow that relates to my phone, my cell phone, my smartphone. And one small illustration of wonderful technology in the evolution of technology and consumer health informatics in general. Technologies that support consumerism. I've talked about that. Why aren't we seeing in healthcare the kinds of integration, the kinds of creativity and innovation that we see in every other aspect of our lives? And here's a big one that I don't think gets enough recognition that we will certainly talk about. If you look at consumer health informatics, which I still think is a nascent industry, it's an early stage industry, you will find that they are delivering really cool applications for mental health, for addiction, in my own case, for other conditions, or for managing, again, that behavioral piece as we deal with software as a medical device. But the way they did that was the technologists understood what a specific set of clinicians, how they interpreted evidence-based practice, and then they expressed that technology. That they expressed that evidence-based practice through technology. What that means is that if you're a different practitioner and you want to absorb that, use that technology, absorb it in your practice, then you have to buy into the way that technology expresses the evidence-based practice as determined by somebody else. It's not very configurable. If you think about how websites are developed or in their progression, early on you had to write in CSS and HTML and you built your website. Today, you've got WordPress. You might use Elementor, a wonderful development tool that sits on top of WordPress. Or you might go to Wix, or what is it, Squarespace, Square, I don't remember. The names of these commercial sites where you can quickly, using a configurable platform, configure the website that you want with the features and functions that you want. We haven't gotten there with respect to consumer health informatics yet. And I think that's the greatest opportunity we see as an industry overall, part of the natural maturing of it, but we will certainly be talking about that trend and what it means in the course of these 4 months. With respect to Slack for this module 1, I'm going to post a question, and then for those that contact me, I'll be glad to give you that link to that channel. And for now, I'm just going to start off with a simple question of which forms of consumer health informatics are most important to you and why. So if you'd like to participate in our Slack discussion and you'd like to see the next modules of this series, then drop me a note or post a comment to this video, and I'll send you the links, and I'd love to have you join us. So my goal for each of you is to make you feel comfortable, to feel empowered, to play a role, or at least to be able to understand what is happening today with respect to consumer health informatics. In the long run, I hope that our work here and the work with my students and my own individual work allows us to advance and to empower the consumer, the patient, in their own healthcare, and thereby to enhance and improve healthcare for the healthcare system as a whole. And I'd love for you to come with me on this journey. If you have questions, post them below, send me an email, and otherwise, thank you for taking the time to watch this discussion, and I do hope that you see me next week. Goodbye.